Hey, you filthy hookers, you are listening to Deep Penetration, a podcast where my beautiful friends and I will fuck your mind with balls deep insight into the human condition. Enjoy, freaks.
The one thing, and the rhythm of sex, you could say, like, has that thing. Like, it's just like, if you get to build up a constant rhythm, a constant momentum, it's you break free because it's just like an intense experience on loop. Like it's a form of hypnosis.
Man, it's so funny that you say when you're having sex well. Now, because that's an interesting one, man, and I'm embarrassed because when I first started, man, Jesus Christ, that's fucking embarrassing how poor I was.
Man, that's everyone though. That's
Guilty,
everyone.
yeah.
But to
like a
to
jackrabbit.
think that I've got it now as well, I mean, surely in 10 years I'm going to look back on myself now and consider myself just the same way that I considered myself when I was 18. Quite ridiculous. And like, still didn't have it together. When do you have it together? It might be just a constant journey of learning.
But isn't that fantastic? Because at every single point of your development sexually, you know, as with anything, at that point in time, that is the best you've ever been, and therefore the best you've ever experienced. So,
Yeah, that's true.
you know, if
But you also have to consider, I guess, like that it's the coming together of two people and their specific.
Totally
Yeah,
agree. Which is why I
yeah.
disagree wholeheartedly with what you just said. I agree, like, with the gist of it, but like there's that whole grey section of like the other person is half of the experience as well. So you can develop all your experiences and then have a partner that it just doesn't work with, and that's not that you've
Yeah.
gone backwards or that you don't have the skills you've acquired. It just, for whatever reason, your likes, your dislikes aren't gelling.
Because my partner makes me want to further myself and further express myself, and that's happening. There's a learning, there's an education that's going on, and you go,
That's what you want from a
wow,
partner.
There's so much, absolutely, to be challenged and to be pushed.
Well, do you think in that respect there are little evolutions? You
Yeah.
know, in particular relationships, you evolve into that relationship, and then you move. If you were to move on to another one, like you've got. Yeah, of course. Always record.
We are on, man. We are live
but that
on our very
sort of
first
ties
podcast. But continue.
in.
Sorry, Ollie.
Well, with what I was saying, because I think as you do grow, you heighten your ability to connect to another person in that way. You know, like even if I'd met, say, that person 5 or 6 years ago, I don't know if I would necessarily have been able to connect to them in the same way that I can now because I have learnt so much over time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a trippy concept.
Well, I guess
Not-
there are two levels there then. You know, you've got your own personal development to the point where you're comfortable and have experienced more of yourself to be comfortable in more and more circumstances, and then to impart that onto a relationship that's in the now.
Man, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, to me, it is all about connection. Nothing turns me on more than connection. It used to be wham blam for me. I used to watch way too much porn, and I used to just mimic that, like that, just that whole drilling and like just not. It was mindless. Yeah, it was. It was mindless, animalistic sex, and I'm not saying that there's no place for that, but it was like that. And now it's changed. Now it's become something far more deep and something far more intense. Something far more intense.
Yeah.
And so I've learned. I think I've learned a lot, and I'm sure I've got a lot more to learn. But it's funny. You think you've got it all figured out. You think you've got it all figured out when you first start. I certainly did. God, how naive I was. How pathetic and silly. It makes me feel really silly to think back on how I used to be. But I guess we were all like that in a way. So
Yeah.
we can't
No,
beat
I was
ourselves
always
up
right.
too much about it.
I was always a sex god.
True. Just getting them all, raking them in.
But I mean, it applies to pretty much all aspects of your life. If you constantly look back on yourself and judge yourself,
Yeah.
I mean, like everything that you've done really is an accumulation of who you are. And you can't really look back and say, oh, I was naive or I was silly in context to what's happening now, because that's what created you.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, and I mean, like, it's just the way you look at things, really. I mean, like, you can look at things and say, oh, look at what I learned from there, rather than, oh, that was so shit back then.
Yeah, I certainly don't mean to say that. I more mean it in the sense of like how silly it seems in context. When I look back
Yeah.
on it now with my knowledge, or what I claim to be knowledge, it just feels a bit silly and a bit ridiculous. But like you said, I don't regret it. It helped define who I am as a person. It's all those little trip ups and mistakes that you make that actually help you to evolve. I think to see how childish your actions were prior is like the first sign of growth, or maturation.
Of
The fact that you can
difference.
recognise it first and foremost. Yeah?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Growth or regression, I guess it is difference. To see yourself that through time you have become different.
Yeah.
I mean, because who's to say that anything that you're doing is a better perspective or a worse perspective, but you are different. And I guess it's a good point that you're saying that it's basically every aspect of your life, because you're constantly shifting and you're constantly experiencing, and all that you have with you is your perceptions now.
Yeah.
So if
Which
you
you
have
get
those
in flux as well.
yeah,
That's the
exactly.
hilarity. That's the hilarity of the whole thing. Is my perspective of where I am now is going to shift again and again and again. So that's why I try not to subscribe to any beliefs wholeheartedly. And this is an interesting one, Ben, because we were having this discussion the other day. But I try not to subscribe to any beliefs wholeheartedly like I used to. I used to throw myself into concepts, and it was fun. But I'd really hurt myself. Like, I'd find myself in situations where I felt like deceived. The whole Catholic story, for instance. I mean, you could go way back to kindergarten when I was told about the guy with the white beard and the clouds and the Ten Commandments and.
Was that God or Santa?
Yeah, well, they're very similar to one another, aren't they? I mean, it's based on that whole pleasure response of like, you get a gift if you're good, and you get cold if you're bad.
But I think that's a very simplistic viewing of what those whole traditions, those stories and stuff are there to suggest and there to point at. Like, I think a lot of people get disillusioned and go, oh, well, it's all crap, because like it's not 100% true, so therefore I'm going to disregard it altogether. But there's like underlying things, there's underlying ideas, concepts in every religion, every belief system, every theoretical perspective, which has at least a little bit of truth, and it's that sort of subliminal, or not subliminal is the wrong word, subversive maybe, like sublime, I guess, like attainment, which is why you go into those things, why you dive into belief systems, and you refine them rather than just disregarding them wholeheartedly. You can develop on them and grow. And I think the end point is like taking something like Catholicism. If you're just stuck in that one branch your whole life, you're in a very, very cut off perspective. You're in a very singular stream of what ideas of God, the universe, morality are all about. Whereas if you open yourselves up to other moralities, other religious traditions and stuff as well, you see how they all interrelate, and you see the general truth that they're all pointing to, and it becomes more in line. That's the idea of like Sophism and like pantheism, like taking it all on board to have a truer appreciation of what's behind it.
Which I think ties in with what with how Matt started this, which is if you actually leave yourself open to not fully subscribing to one thing, but allow yourself to take all of the merit and all of the good points of various things that you can explore. You leave yourself open to learning more and more, as opposed to confining yourself to one particularly defined way of being or
Absolutely.
staples of life.
That's exactly
Total.
what I used to do. And I
Yeah.
certainly don't disregard any religion. Dude, that white beard guy in the clouds with the Ten Commandments, that could fucking be real. I know that as preposterous as that may sound to some people.
It's just as
Well,
valid as
Hey
any
man,
other thing.
it
Yeah.
is.
It is one reality amongst an infinite amount of other realities which this universe is. It isn't. That's the whole point. Is it's not one way. It can be the grey guy in the sky, or it can be the spaghetti monster. It can be 1,000 Hindu gods all working together as a
Aliens
team.
coming
It
down
can be
from other planets
exactly.
to
It can be.
inject them
It can be
their
all of
DNA
that. It can
into
be all of
human
that
beings, yeah.
at once in a way. Like there's, this idea that reality is a singular, tangible thing restricts our perception of it.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's why it's so important to be open-minded.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't. And now I feel that I am. But then again, I still catch myself out being closed-minded in many respects. And I was talking to Ben the other day, actually, about attempting to seek out podcasts, radio channels, television channels that are very, very much not me, to further help define myself. So rather than, the easy thing to do when you go on the internet is to access all of the information that interests you, that you believe in and
Which
vibe
reflects
with.
your already existing identity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which
Solidifies it.
just solidifies and concretes your concepts. Well, how about venturing out into the World Wide Web or whatever media it is and actually attempting to expose yourself to information that really does challenge you? I don't think we do that much. And as such, we can find ourselves very skewed and very biased, and we can look at things perhaps through a bit of a fog.
But it's a natural human process, I guess, to construct your own worldview and validate your own ideas and filter information accordingly as you're kind of experiencing it. You know, you live your life with kind of these blinkers on until something shakes up your world and allows you at least the chance to open your perspective up.
Shakes up your world, man. Psychedelics. That's exactly what did it. That is exactly what did it, man. It was mushrooms.
The mother of all slaps.
It was a mother of all slaps to the face. And all of a sudden, as horrific as it was like going through a birth canal. There was a lot of kicking, there was a lot of screaming. But when I came out the other side, I realised that I couldn't... Things were slippery. Reality and my understanding of what reality was were very slippery after that. And now I guess I tread more carefully and more hesitantly when it comes to subscribing to any beliefs. Because I feel like these blinders were opened on me and it was like, hey man, you don't know shit. You don't.
Yeah, but is that sort of, I mean, is that an argument for, let's say, it doesn't have to be an argument for, but subscribing to one particular religion, although nothing will ever really allow you to grasp that, which is ungraspable, I guess, that experience. You can never really attain it. So the point is really just to find something to completely immerse yourself into.
Sure.
And if that for you is, even in a sense, organized religion, even if that for you is, you know, the Bible solely as the word, which you subscribe to and which you follow your entire life with, well then...
Or science.
Or science, whatever it is. Or even the idea that nothing is true is an idea of yours that you subscribe to.
It's
You know, so
still a
it's
form of religion, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's still
yeah.
an ideology of some kind that I adhere to, but it's a religion to destroy all religions in a sense. I feel like the idea that there is no idea, the idea that there
But
is...
that just those two forces always constantly in battle, pushing against each other. You
There's
know,
something really
and I mean,
funny about that.
yeah, and you know, I think it's about allowing people to do whatever the fuck that it is they want. You know. And even if that is, you know, kind of searching out to destroy all religions or destroy all, like, structured ideas, or if that is to follow one particular thing, to immerse yourself, to, you know, follow the traditions and the habits and whatever it is of that particular idea.
I think the idea of a path is to eventually see that once you've gone far enough down that path and you've devoted yourself to the path. I remember the Krishnas, when we went to the centre the other week, were talking about bhakti, like the devotional path, and like how that's the easiest way to reach sort of enlightenment or to reach some sort of like understanding and reflecting of the love which is inherent in the universe, is through bhakti, is through devotion, to devoting yourself to something wholeheartedly. Because if you don't devote yourself to something, then it becomes an egoic game where you're just taking everything for your own benefit. Even if you're surfing the net, even if you're viewing everything and you're open-minded and you're taking things from everywhere, it's all about how am I taking this information to do something with it. It's not like devoting yourself outwardly. So it's still it's an inward direction of the flow. Yeah. Whereas if you devote yourself, and you can devote yourself to everything, obviously the Krishnas will say devote yourself to Krishna.
Yeah.
But, you know, that aside, you can devote yourself to any path. The point is that path eventually you'll get to a point on that path where you realise that path is synonymous. It's actually symmetrical with every other path you could have taken. The path of like Richard Dawkins, arguably, he will reach a certain point in his evolutionary theory, his idea. He'll come to a certain perception of the world, which will be the exact same as the person that goes like hardcore fundamentalist, you know, Muslim. They're just through different word games and different practices, different rituals, reaching the same understanding of the universe, which is to say that it's all one. And that's the end game, is to realize that but like you can't just go, well, I know it's all one, I know it's infinite and it's all one, so I'm just not going to follow any path because I know it's all one. Because then you're just sort of stuck in limbo. Whereas following a path is how you deepen your perception of oneness, of the idea that everything is whole, and you deepen your identity, but also reflecting on the identity that it's an illusion anyway. Like you're creating this identity along this path as a scientist, as a religious nut, as a I don't know, musician, painter, whatever, teacher. But eventually you come to the point of realizing that the entire spectrum of humanity exists within that role.
Yeah. Man, I love the concept of... Yeah, I totally agree. And I certainly... I mean, this whole concept of everything being one is a really interesting one, and it's starting to come up more and more in the dialogue, certainly with quantum physics and what that suggests about the nature of reality, how everything is connected. But then I see things like Monkey Rapes Frog on YouTube. Have you seen Monkey Rapes Frog?
I haven't seen Monkey Rapes Frog. I'm yet to
like-
watch Monkey Rapes
It's a
Frog.
monkey raping a frog in the mouth, right? And it's got about 8 million hits. And then, you know, this beautiful concept of like everything being...
Oneness doesn't imply goodness.
I was just
Yeah.
about to say that, like,
Okay.
oneness
Yeah.
implies a functioning whole which has all different aspects to it, you know, yin and
Sure.
yang,
A
light and
shifting
dark.
face.
It's
unbiased.
again it's and all the mystic branches of religions sort of point to this as well. Like for example, in Christianity, you have the Gnostics who worship Abraxas as the true God. Abraxas is the idea that the God which gave us the Ten Commandments and Satan are actually the same God. They're just pretending to be two different things. They're different masks of the same God, which is Abraxas.
And it's
So they
just
worship
this game.
Abraxas. And it's just this game. He puts on the mask of being Satan. He gets drunk. He gets wasted. And he starts magnifying glassing his children and, like, you know,
Yeah.
burning cities down and going, hey, Jesus, I'm going to, you know, nail you on a cross now and stuff like that. So it's just like this game that he does when he's bored and drunk.
like
But it's
the-
still the one, you know.
It's
very
like the
human, isn't it?
Buddhist asks his master. He said something along the lines of, "How do I become enlightened?" Which is like the first thing
Yeah.
that a Buddhist monk will ask his master. And the master, without even responding with any words, just gives him a look, and through his eyes, he says, through his eyes only, like, you know, like, don't be stupid. I
Yeah.
know you're hiding
Yeah.
behind there, behind the ego, and you know all along
Yeah.
that you're part of this game.
Yeah.
And you know, it's kind of that same concept of like, behind all of these masks and these personas and the ego is that there's an understanding there that's always been there and always will be there.
Alan Watts says it's like, you know, God has decided to play hide and seek within us.
Yeah.
Because it'd be boring being on your own, realizing that I'm infinite consciousness with unlimited potential.
Yeah.
I can create anything I want to create. I can do anything I want to do. Fuck, that's boring. I want to pretend that I am these amazing limitations and restrictions
Yeah.
and play these restrictions out in these, you know, strange personalities which conflict with each other, because that's way more entertaining than just
Yeah.
being omnipotent.
Do you remember that game GTA? It was a game.
Yeah,
you
Grand
drove
Theft
around in
Auto.
cars
Grand
and
Theft Auto, yeah,
you just beat up grandmas with baseball
Yeah.
bats and you just fuck up people left, right.
Yeah,
centre
you
in your
plow
car.
down the Hare Krishna. They had like a roll.
Yeah,
And you, like,
yeah.
you get like a massive combo if you killed all the
You get a
Krishnas.
massive combo.
Yeah.
Anyway, the reason I bring that up is because I remember getting a cheat in that game, and that cheat afforded me with all the weapons, all
Yeah.
the power in the world
Yeah.
to conquer this place, and it was boring as
Yeah.
shit.
As soon
And
as
it's
you
the
have
same
everything
thing.
at your disposal,
Yeah.
so what
Yeah.
do you do then?
It's like I don't care.
There's this quote from Troy, the film of all things, which says it's something like, the gods envy us because we're mortal, because our time
Yeah.
here is limited.
I've heard that. It's a good
And
one.
therefore every moment has meaning and is precious, because it will, at one point, it will not exist.
Absolutely.
Which makes, you know, it has made me wonder what life would be like if we were immortal. You know, like, would you get to a point?
Well, the thing is, this is actually slowly becoming a reality with the whole singularity. You know,
Technology.
exactly the
Yeah,
technology
right.
thing of, like, you know, nanotechnology merging with the human body, and like, so this is in the foreseeable future, like potentially in our
It's
lifetimes.
part of the discussion, a literal scientific discussion. This is no longer science fiction.
It's not an illusion anymore. It's like very much like this is probably going to happen at some point in the near future, like the next few hundred years. Maybe not in our lives, but like
I mean,
potentially.
taking into account the exponential growth curves of technology, this stuff's happening faster and faster and faster.
At the moment, I think the growth rate's like double, like every 12 months, like it's doubling. Like, so the technology and information we have access to is
that
doubling.
is
And
absolutely...
it's exponential. So in another 12 months, it will double. And then in 6 months after that, it will double again. In 3 months, it will double. In a month and a half, it will double. In about a few years' time, it will be down to the point where daily information and technology is doubling.
And that is just... And then down to the seconds.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're racing to... we can't catch up now.
No.
I mean, this thing's escaped us. It's
Yeah.
like it's out of our hands now.
Did anyone by any chance see on the news this robot that has been developed? It's like a robot soldier that can run and carry a gun.
Yeah.
Oh
and
my
it's
God.
supposed to be used to test equipment for
Dude.
soldiers. The last line of the news was, they say that at this point there is no intention to build a robot army.
At this point,
Which is hilarious now. In 5 years' time,
Terrifying.
we know
that.
that's the thing.
well, there was a cheetah.
Yeah.
They put
Yeah.
a fucking cheetah, man. This thing ran at like, it's a robot
Yep.
cheetah. It ran at like 30 miles per hour. I might totally have butchered that, but that's fucking fast, man. And this thing has machine gun turrets on its back. I mean, imagine that. Man.
Yeah.
War is no longer going to be fought as flesh and blood. It will be fought with robots, man. They've actually, people that are really good gamers are being hired because they're used to PlayStation controls. Are being hired and rigging up PlayStation controls or Xbox controls to weapons of war, robots, drones. So these cats are literally flying into, Iraqi territory, taking out civilians, and
And that's so
killing-
scary because it's a video game.
It's a detachment.
It's
already
complete
players
detachment.
to
And
isolation.
that's what the what was his name, the Assange that brought out that video of like that. Have you seen that video of like the guys in the helicopter
Oh, yeah,
gunning
yeah.
down the guys in Iraq?
Oh,
And it is you get that presence. It is a video game to them. You hear it in their voices. It's like
There's
they're
laughter.
having fun. There's laughter. It's a fun and
Yeah,
game.
I have
And this is like innocent civilians and like a family of kids in a van that they're gunning down.
Yeah, right.
And it's just like it's like GTA. It's like Grand Theft Auto. It is
Yeah.
that detachment. It's like this.
That's frightening.
It's so frightening. It'll make you cry when you see the video because
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
horrible,
which is
man.
why the U.S. military tried so hard to repress it and hold it back.
Oh, that was
and
like
why he's
WikiLeaks.
now like if he gets indicted to the U.S. he's like on death row and stuff.
Jeez, man, that was like WikiLeaks, like Philosopher's Stone. Like
that
was
was
the thing
that was what blew that whole thing up.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of anti-war sentiment after that.
That's-
That blew that whole thing up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very good way of putting it.
Yeah.
It was that. I don't know why that guy is still alive. I don't understand that. I don't know why he is still around.
Well, so
How has he not been assassinated yet?
Because that would show if he was assassinated that would only further what he was trying to.
All right, man.
It
I watched
gives
Like it would prove that yes, the US is corrupt as fuck.
I watched X-Files yesterday. I always bring up X-Files. I fucking love that show. Mulder is revealing the UFO conspiracy, right? That the government has been, hiding the existence of extraterrestrials. The whole conspiracy that we've heard 1,000 times before. And it's the smoking man. It's the evil villain antagonist in the X-Files, and it's this. He's the master villain, and he's asked by one of his henchmen, "Why don't we just kill Mulder? Why don't we kill him?" And the smoking man responds with, "To kill him would make him a martyr and further his cause." And it's that whole idea of like we're doing far more damage by killing this man.
Yeah, I mean, if the Romans didn't crucify Christ, he might have been forgotten about.
He might have been just a beer swigging hippie douchebag. Like, what if he
Yeah.
turned into a douchebag? Like he wouldn't be remembered.
Yeah.
He starts turning too much water into
Well, that's the thing. You might, yeah,
Just wasted constantly.
you might have you cut people down in their prime. They're bound to be remembered as way more amazing than
Yeah. I mean,
if you let them grow old and saggy and
Yeah.
Yeah.
What of Bob
Bitter
Marley?
and
What of Kurt
failed.
Cobain?
Yeah.
Would they be the heroes that they are today? I mean, if they were allowed to, if they were given
They were allowed to.
opportunity- allowed to live longer. Sorry, Kurt Cobain took his own life. Or did he?
Hey,
Who was I can't remember his name. He was a massive advocate for LSD in the
Timothy
60s.
Leary.
Yeah,
Timothy Leary, yeah.
Yeah.
The further he got along, the further he just was able to be kind of portrayed as this
Yeah.
Drug-
losing it manner, which to some extent he may have been. But
Yeah.
there was a point where he was incredibly influential, where he had people
Absolutely.
breaking him out of jails, and then he was
Yeah.
allowed to live.
The
And
Weather Underground.
Yeah,
wasn't
that's
it?
right. Yeah.
Well, as the body degenerates, and he had an amazing sense of humor. And I think the whole thing with the whole acid push was very much a game for him. It was very much this like kind of like fun he was having with his wife. Let's become like acid, prophets.
So it was a goof. more
No,
than
it was real, but they approached it in a goofy way. They approached it as like and they were sort of very lacking in any sort of value systems, which I'd say is a good thing, and was what you were arguing earlier. Like they were known for like they join up with vegetarian people and have them over to dinner and like serve steaks and stuff.
Yeah, right.
And then when like the meat eating guys came around, they would be like very special vegetarians and like very strict and all that. So they just play whatever the opposite role to whoever they were catering to.
Yeah.
So like, and that was their sort of form of enlightenment. It was like whatever the people that were coming to them wanted from them, they would give them the opposite.
Yeah, right.
So it was a complete game to them.
Well,
But is that necessarily but a game in the most crude of respects, or like maybe they're making a point?
No,
Anything is
a
valid.
very sophisticated, very
Yeah.
intelligent game with great, insights being
Yeah.
played out. I didn't mean that in a crude way at all. I don't think games are a bad thing. I think games are a great thing.
Yeah.
yeah, man, this guy's the biggest joker you will ever meet. Like, I never know what's up with him. He's constantly switching masks. He's constantly dancing. You never know what's up. So you're testament to that, man. And that's a massive compliment.
I wouldn't
adore
take it as
the
anything
dance.
The dance.
But I mean, he was he was like, I don't want to say, well, crazy in a great way. I mean, he was pushing conventions, and didn't he shoot himself off into space? I mean, didn't he do something crazy?
Nah, what he did, when he died, he had himself decapitated and he had his head frozen cryogenically. And
Yeah, he's fucking crazy.
but again,
Like, people don't do that.
again, but it was just part of the joke.
Yeah, right.
It was just part of his game. It was part of his joke. And the idea was like when the technology is invented, for him to have his brain transplanted into the body of a black woman, he wanted that to happen.
Wow.
So his head's still frozen somewhere. But I think he knew he was never going to get woken back up. I think it was just like this grand, like rather than just taking death as this like, okay, I'm leaving now. Like, why not just make a mockery of it? Like,
Yeah, right.
you have that option. We all have that option.
Walt Disney had that option. He chose to take that option.
Yeah, I think he took it a bit more serious though. I think he was a bit more
crazy. Yeah.
he was crazy. He was legitimately crazy. That's like the people that do those things, like with serious intention. That's when it's worrying. It's like when it's done as a bit of a joke or a bit of a like, let's just fuck with
Walt
the
Disney froze
boundaries.
himself, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
But at this point in time,
His
is
head
it
too.
such a ludicrous idea? That
Oh.
could actually. We were
Yeah.
talking just before about
So
the
crazy,
progression
just
of,
not work.
science and of
Storing the
technology.
brain.
It's not at all. No, not at all. But I still think the intention might have been that,
Well, yes.
Yeah.
It's like whatever happened to the Lion King. Like, you live, you go back into the dirt. Now these motherfuckers are
Trying to
decapitating
cheat it.
themselves
Yeah.
and freezing it. Something's gone
Save my consciousness. It's so valid and important. My individuality needs to be preserved for all of humanity.
Can you
Damn, I
imagine
make
Timothy
cartoons,
Leary's
motherfucker.
brain awakening in a black woman and going, "He's serious, guys. You actually did this."
I can't imagine a world where I don't exist. Don't allow that to happen.
Nor should you.
You need me.
Carl Sagan, didn't he do anything?
Who?
Did he do anything, Carl Sagan?
I don't know who that is.
He wore
Oh,
sweaters.
It was
Oh,
the
man.
original, the Cosmos
Cosmos.
series.
Oh, dude, I need to introduce you.
I
to Carl
don't.
Sagan.
I've been living under a rock apparently.
What was
He is
what was the
Oh, man.
Okay.
What was
What
an interesting
was the
man.
thing where they send all that stuff out into space?
Yeah, man. He was behind that operation,
yeah.
and I reckon I'm getting mixed up with that. They actually shot some sort of a shuttle off into space.
it's like a
that
Human
contained
DNA.
Beethoven,
Yeah.
human DNA,
picture of a
messages from
face.
a few presidents.
All in binary, wasn't it?
Yeah, man. So the hope being, I mean, really, they've sent out a message in a bottle to the entire galaxy in the hopes that perhaps one day some sort of intelligent species will come across it and it will blow their fucking minds. But they might just see it as being like, look at these primitive fucks.
Yeah. We don't want anything to do with that planet.
Yeah.
Leave that one away.
That Beethoven
Stand
guy.
on by.
That Beethoven guy. Look at that ridiculously. Like, I mean, that piano. Look at his piano playing skills.
He's still using sheet music.
Seriously, man, they could. I could totally see that. I could totally see us being quite ridiculous in the scheme of extraterrestrial intelligences. I mean, how far we've come. We consider it a great success, and perhaps it is, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, how far have we gone? We've only just hardly pissed over our backyard fence in the scheme of the galaxy.
Depends on what way you look at it, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's all
Is
relative.
it constantly expanding, or is it a cyclic phenomenon?
I don't know. I've got no idea. But I mean, I guess.
But why do we say that? Because we don't have that physical journey, that we are somehow stunted. I mean, like the kind of spiritual quest that possibly human beings have been on may supersede anything that where we've traveled through a physical galaxy of some kind.
It
or
might,
we've
man.
developed some kind of light ship of some kind that flies.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, any physical, it supersedes any physical manifestation.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if it supersedes all the time or if there is like a kind of difference between that, but there seems to be an emphasis placed on progress as being like a physical thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, where we're going outside of the world
right,
and
as opposed
further
to
out into
eternally
yeah,
exploring.
yeah. And I mean, like human beings in the scheme of the planet, although we are not separate, we are different in a regard, and we do have some kind of potential
Fuck
that,
yeah.
that seems possibly different to the rest of the species in the world, let's say.
The limit
Why?
is something.
Why is that, man?
Yeah.
Why are we placing ourselves?
Well, because we seem, I can't really talk for any
I
other
agree.
being,
I'm
but
just
but
playing.
we seem to have some kind of search, you know, or like a kind of inward search that possibly other beings don't.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that the
I mean,
interesting
yeah,
one?
yeah, but we
Because
do
we're
place that
speaking on
for
the
some
behalf of
reason.
other
Yeah,
species.
yeah.
But I'd agree. From what I've
Because
seen.
I mean, we have intuition like other animals may have intuition, but on top of that, and again, it's placing things on, you know, on animals or on plants or whatever. But from looking at behavior, it seems that animals are more intuitive, and we kind of feel that intuition, but we still have this other aspect to us which searches out, imagines, and creates, and creates abstract ideas that we form from feelings.
Yeah.
And from intuition, and we seem to be working it out in a different way.
Where is that coming from? I mean, we've got. It appears we have a more complexified language than our animal counterparts. Is that a lot to do with it?
Well, language, yeah, definitely. Language is the ability to abstract and be outside of the present moment. When you're outside of the present moment, you can construct time, you know, beyond the present time. So you can construct past and future. When you can construct past, present, future, you can create a storyline to your life. When you can create a storyline to your life, you have to create a character for your life. Animals don't feel the need to create a character. They're just the character they are is whoever they are in the present moment. Whereas we have that idea that we are this person which has come from this past and is heading towards this future.
Which is considered a burden sometimes.
It definitely.
But does that objectivity of seeing our character allow us to step outside possibly that, you know, the Lion King circle of life?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
otherwise we just kind of are in that eternal cycle. We go on and we live it, and that's fine, and that's an experience. But allowing ourselves to see that cycle from an objective third person perspective,
Right.
Well,
possibly allows us to lift ourselves beyond. I mean,
Meditation,
that's a
you're going
Buddhist
back to the
idea.
I know.
Yeah.
I think what you're going for is the opposite, but the complementary other half of what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
speaking
Yeah.
about like the ego, which is very much like the character
Yeah.
which we believe ourselves to be.
Yeah.
You're speaking more about like the soul, like the eternal being, which is despite the past, the present, the future, what is essential of ourselves, and you know, and lasting. I suppose that's sort of what you're.
I thought you were more
Yeah,
saying...
yeah, but still
To get
one,
off the ride.
still a soul with awareness.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. To be aware of that soul.
Yeah, and to be aware of that soul again is a step above just being that soul.
But
Yeah,
sometimes-
man, I
You know,
totally
there
see it. You're
seems-
talking about objectification, but you're
But
also saying
not
that
not in a restrictive way. In a
Yeah, I know.
in a
Potential.
impartial observer
going
way.
back to potential, this incredible potential that comes around through the objectification where we can see things as they are happening. But I'm just going to put the argument out there that I just don't think we can say that animals aren't experiencing
Yeah,
that.
that's
what I
fair
find
enough.
interesting.
Yeah.
We do have this sort of hubris when it comes to talking about other creatures as if we live through their eyes and
Yeah.
through their brains. And that's an interesting one, man. I was watching David Attenborough. God bless his soul, man. He's an amazing guy in many respects. But I started to realise that some of the things that he says, I just take it all as gospel. I'm like, this guy could be talking out of his fucking ass, and I
But he's
believe
talking
it.
it
I
well.
believe it. He just talks so well, and he tells a great
Such
story.
eloquence.
Well, I guess that's
And
the
we go-
bottom line, isn't it? Animals don't have the power to communicate verbally
To us.
to us.
Yeah.
But not
So
just-
so we assume that they don't have that ability to communicate verbally to themselves.
Yeah, but that's a big assumption.
That's a
isn't it?
But
massive
we can't
assumption.
communicate
Yeah.
verbally to them that well either,
but in terms of the
Or
difference
to
between...
ourselves.
or to ourselves for that matter.
But in terms of the difference between us and them, shall we say, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have evolved exponentially more significantly than any other species. And even if you can't tell, you can't necessarily compare that on a biological level. If you look at our trends, our patterns of being, most other animals seem to be really quite consistent with the way that they go about
Yeah,
life,
right.
whereas we change.
Yeah, you don't
All
see
the
chimps
time.
making rocket ships yet,
Well, yeah.
or sheep.
But
Imagine
even,
if you
even
saw a
fluctuations
sheep.
of war and peace and, emphasizing love and emphasizing the need for growth and all these other things, like you just don't
Yeah.
see those types of trends
Yeah, you're
in
right.
animals.
If we saw a sheep, right, building a spaceship, we would kill it. We would freak out. We wouldn't let that shit ride. Dude, humans would not let that shit ride. They would cut it short. They'd be like, that is not happening. Not on this rock. We own this fucking place. You are getting cut back in line, sir. Know your place. Don't you reckon? We'd stop that shit.
We'd probably fuck it first and then,
And then
put
we'd
it in
kill
its
it.
place.
Or we'd put it in like, or we'd put it in like a zoo prison where it can like build like model airplanes.
And we could be like, oh, that's cute.
Yeah. Oh, how adorable.
Yeah. Well, man.
And give it some like really like sissy name, like Polly. Oh, Polly, the sheep that builds model airplanes. Oh, what a,
Well,
what a,
isn't-
what a sweetheart.
Isn't that the Pinky and the Brain?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pinky in the brain has something to do with this?
Well, no, that's the brain tries to take over the world every night.
Yeah.
That's what that sheep is.
Oh man, I haven't seen that show in so long.
Yeah, right. It was two mice trying to take over the world, and he's like a genius.
Pinky and the brain.
brain.
brain. I love that show.
Yeah, it's good.
God damn, ABC used to have it down pat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Round the twist.
Wasn't that a
Banana
Spielberg?
Man.
Pinky in the Brain?
Pinky, was Spielberg behind Pinky and the
God.
Brain?
Really?
I thought he was.
What?
Dude,
Yeah,
that's
I thought I
crazy.
saw in the credits. It was like a Spielberg production.
Wow. If that's the case, I'm gonna Google that later.
You
Don't
know-
quote me on this.
Another Google. I'll be angry if it's not now. Now you've set up my.
You're quote unquote on recording.
Yeah,
so,
too late.
yeah.
Yeah, but you don't know my face, so it's all
But listening to the Joe Rogan Experience the other day, it was once again a discussion of ETs. I am obsessed with the concept of aliens. I love to talk about them. But he was talking about how if they did come down to our planet, that they would be hostile. And his reasoning for that was the way that human beings respond in situations of when they consider something inferior to them, they control them. They become cattle, livestock, etc. And he was saying that he feels that it would be no different, that it would be very much like these savages. They need to be controlled. We'd become some sort of a zoo of sorts for their benefit or attention. We become study, as opposed to this lovely idea of they embrace us, they teach us, they help us to learn and understand the cosmos.
But that's
But
an
that-
assumption of
Yeah,
difference.
it is projecting our human qualities onto whatever it is that comes.
They're going to be
Yeah.
so different than us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I don't think you can. I think all bets are off with like what alien life would be like.
Yeah, right.
It wouldn't even be similar to any animal life because it's from a different fucking planet.
Yeah, it could be a ball of
They,
gas.
they could be made
Yeah.
of, rather than carbon, they could be made of like silicon, like,
Yeah.
atoms.
Pure
and stuff.
consciousness.
Mm.
Let's
Yeah.
just throw ourselves into that. I mean, we see it on South Park, the typical grey, the large head, the black eyes, and it's humanoid, and it appears to be clearly a human creation. I mean, it seems to be an extension of our own imaginative abilities.
Well,
which
the
don't
argument
go
that
too
we've
far.
spoken about of like the Greys being our descendants.
I love this. Can we talk about
Yeah,
this?
we can talk
I
about
love
this.
Well, I was
This
just
is a
about to
cool
go onto
concept.
that.
Yeah.
Take it away, my friend.
The idea basically is that, through like we're talking about like the singularity and stuff, so like, inserting nanotechnology into the body to preserve it. So basically we become these like cyborg, half human, half robotic sort of like computer beings that are immortal essentially. But in the process, because technology, the single, would love one, the single most sort of like important, sort of not important, but like the purpose, I suppose, of technology is efficiency.
Yeah.
It's to help us do what we want to do more efficiently in life, to make the workload of living on this planet easier for ourselves. So technology is by design about efficiency. If we combine the human body with technology, it will be about what is the most efficient place for the human body, and that has a massive risk of getting rid of all biological diversity, because it will just become like this body, this sort of like way of functioning. The liver has to function in this way, the brain, and the technology will be doing itself. It will be correcting the body that we've inserted into it,
Eradicating
programmed way.
variables.
into its
Being-
programmed way of being efficient. So we
Yeah.
just become this efficient body, which over time would just become one sort of standard, which is the idea of the grey. They all look the same. They've sort of just become this one body, which has the big brains, the black eyes, because it's the
Yeah.
most efficient way to get around.
Right.
For technology, which is combined with the body, it's like just for efficiency's sake. But by getting rid of that biological diversity, essentially we become completely boring.
Yeah.
Because then what's different? We're all the same. We're all grey aliens. We all look the same. We all think the same. We all feel the same. Our understandings are all the same because technology within us, it's like a computer matrix.
Why do we think that technology isn't diversified itself?
Because it's programmed. You know, once you enter a program into something, because it doesn't have its own conscious ability to reprogram itself, it should.
But it is
And
diverse.
But
It is
we are
diverse at the
looking-
present time. But again, it's the idea of efficiency. So there's the idea that a human body will run efficiently a certain way, and that's sort of the same
but
across the board.
I think
so
we
it will
separate
correct towards
technology,
that.
but we seem to be separating technology there from the human being. And I don't think technology and the human being are at all separable, because we are interacting with it constantly. So we're interacting with what's in us.
At the moment,
at
the moment, and this is the idea of the singularity. At the moment, that human consciousness still slightly supersedes technological consciousness. So we are
Yeah.
we still have a few cards up our sleeve. But the idea of singularity is that technology will, exponentially develop to a point where actually its own momentum is behind us, and it's developing way quicker than we can possibly evolve,
Man.
and we can wrap our heads around its evolution.
Right.
So it becomes the power. Then it becomes way more.
But that means we've gone back into one collective consciousness, right?
It
That's
does.
what's happening.
There's nothing wrong with that. is
No,
there?
no, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying it ends biological diversity. We go back. We all become the grey. This is a theory, by the way.
Yeah,
it's just-
of course.
It's we all become the grey alien, and the idea then is that like the grey aliens have then invited these time traveling machines which rotate against the spin of the Earth. They, the flying saucers go backwards compared to the Earth spin, so that they can look at their ancestors, which is us, because we're way more interesting than being them. So they watch the drama. They it's like a TV show to them.
Yeah,
it's
man,
like
that's
check out our ancestors.
it's a
They were
mind-blowing
funny.
concept.
They did some cool stuff.
That would be a
Because
great
back in the
movie.
grey village, all they do is just like be really peaceful and
know,
boring and dull.
I wonder how many people would become this grey society, because it just made me think that yes, technology is primarily used to increase efficiency, but it's also used as entertainment. There's a large part of it which is used to effectively dumb down a lot of the population.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's some conspiracy theory, shall we go with that you wouldn't want the number of people that we have on this planet at the moment to be the number that you have in this grey society, because it's just too many. We're already too many.
Yep.
So I wonder if like half would proceed into this grey society, and the other half would be
right. There's like a splitting.
obliterated, like forced,
Adapt or
forced.
die.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
we've got to
it's-
get together and write a film.
Dude, I seriously think this would be a great film.
Dude,
Anyone listening is not allowed.
Copyright.
Established
That's it.
copyright.
That's it.
Ladies and gentlemen.
It's documented now, so it's all sorted.
Back to the technology and us being inseparable from technology. That's a really interesting one. And I was listening to a futurist, Jason Silver, the other day. He's an incredible man. He releases these 2-minute YouTube videos known as philosophical shots of espresso, and he talks about the future being this incredible domain of the merging of technology and biology. And just the way he speaks, he's got that Terence McKenna, Malcolm X quality. There's something about his words that just draws you in, man. It just gets you. But anyway, he was talking about aeroplanes, and he was talking about iPhones, and he was talking about all of these gadgets that we've actually designed, we've actually invented and created. And he was saying that they are inseparable from the human being, that they are literally things that were extruded from the monkey mind consciousness. They are part of us, inseparably a part of us, in the same way that a termite's nest is part of the termite. And he was saying that when we're in a plane, he goes, this thing isn't a separate object to us. This is a suit that we wear so we can be like Superman. And he said that this iPhone was developed rather than having an extra part of the brain that would develop, the cerebral cortex, which is a million-year process, the human being decided to develop an iPhone which would allow for telepathy, which is what it is. And we're sending signals to the other side of the planet almost instantaneously. We're actually merging our thoughts with other people, and it's an incredible concept.
I like that
Which we
idea.
accept so easily.
The question that comes to my mind is, what did the termites do before they invented the nest?
What the fuck, man? Is that like the chicken and the egg?
It is totally, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, at what point did biological organisms start creating? At what point did, you know...
Bees start creating hives.
Yeah, at what point...
Mathematically exact.
At what point? Because you're right, because, you know, technology is just a form of creation, and animals are creative as well, and they have their, I suppose, more... We would look at them, at least, as more rudimental creations than human creations. But, you know, at what point did creation... At what point did organisms and, like, you know, animals and stuff become the creators? At what point did that power
It's
create?
constantly happening, I guess, in that respect. It's like you look at our technology now as often coming from prior science fiction.
Yeah,
You know, that
right.
it's constantly becoming science fact. It's our future projection out of creativity. We're consciously, constantly trying to
fascinating.
create the intention of a conscious thought. It's like, God damn it, we need this. And we constantly
Wow.
don't need this until we have it.
Man.
And then what else do we need?
It's so true.
And it comes back to that idea of the efficiency of technology as well. We're constantly creating this efficiency in the thing, and we get it right. And it's like animals, like, you know, the termites in the nest. It's like they've got to that point where they've suddenly created that thing that fits the need, which is the nest. And so now it's so honed, and we look and marvel at nature and think it's such a precise mechanism.
Oh
for
my
it to
God,
function.
dude.
It's
It
the
is.
efficiency. It's like animalistic technology.
Except that the way that we have developed with technology, we are using what soon we won't have. You know, animals
Yeah.
have created with the resources that they have available. We keep creating,
Yeah.
and soon there's not going to be anything left for us to create with unless we then heighten our need.
Expand
I guess
our
as we are
horizons.
with, you know, to other planets and to
Yeah.
other.
Which is what the human enterprise has
Systems.
constantly been doing, pushing itself, furthering itself.
As we
As
populate.
McKenna would say, the monkeys didn't stay in the trees. They shot themselves onto the sky. They made it to the moon, questionably, but that's a debate for another time. And it is, and we're constantly pushing ourselves. We're constantly evolving, and there's the concept that we're not going to remain on this rock. We're not going to remain on this. We have possums. Sorry, we have possums upstairs.
Fine, possums are
They're
cool.
just hanging out. Yeah, they're all right.
Yeah.
Ringtails are fun, brushtails now. Continue.
Why? What's the deal? Why don't you like
They're
ringtails?
aggressive. No, ringtails are sweet.
Oh, they're the cool ones.
Yeah.
The other ones are a bit cunty, are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
They'll fight your mum.
Where was I? No, this was oh yeah, not staying within our confines and constantly pushing ourselves and evolving, and
But I think that's a massive problem, and I think
Yeah.
going on the sustainable, looking at the Earth as a confines, as a confinement, looking at this planet and being like, we're confined, we're trapped here, like rather than going like, this is beautiful. How do we live in balance with
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, right.
Because if we trash this planet, move out to the stars, and move on to the next planet, we're just going to repeat that cycle. If we have that mentality that we're confined or restricted, or see life and see the experience of being alive on a planet, whether this one or another one, as a restrictive thing, rather than seeing it as like, fuck, this is beautiful, this is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Let's make the most of it and add beauty and live, you know, in the line with our surroundings rather than like
Yeah.
manipulating.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think
Me too.
that's the wrong word to use.
Well, it comes down to a thought process, doesn't it? It's the same thought process.
Yeah.
You know, you're expanding outwards rather than looking in, and it's like,
Yeah.
so if you're creating confine, you're always trying to escape it, but it comes back to your mind. So
Absolutely.
you're escaping yourself
And
inevitably.
it goes into the Weather Underground, that collective cult of people that were using dynamite in the 70s to
Taking
take
down
out certain
the,
institutions.
yeah.
But they were taking out, like, they weren't taking out the roots of the cancer. The roots of the cancer were in the ego and were in the people behind this mindset.
They're trying
All
to
they
kill
were
the
doing was
symptoms.
destroying concrete and flesh.
Yeah,
And they
buildings,
weren't getting
yeah.
into the guts of what was really
Yeah.
taking place. So that's sort of that
The
same
consciousness,
concept.
which-
The consciousness,
which lies behind it.
which needs a good reboot. I think it needs a good fucking reboot.
Well, we've been in a competitive model now for, well, actually, probably our entire history has been a
Industrial
competitive model.
revolution,
Probably
capitalism,
pre-industrialization, different form of competition.
tribal competition.
Yeah, exactly. War
Yeah.
competition.
Yeah.
But now it's become more monetary and more like resource based. That's where the power lies. But it's probably always been competition rather than other animal species which seem to be able to work collaboratively.
Yeah.
And we work collaboratively in groupings, but not as a whole organism. We still separate and divide and conquer and all that. between ourselves, and that's, I think, wherein lies the problem.
Well, can you see? Are you an optimist? Can you see hope?
I can.
How? How are we gonna?
Well, that's the trickier part. That's the trickier part. I suppose for me, it's more a faithfulness in the human condition, in like the idea that we have the potential to head to a more peaceful existence, and therefore that potentiality implies that it, not that it will happen, but that it can. So we should, since something can happen, you ought to believe in it.
Have you guys heard Art Bell?
Art Bell.
Yeah, Art Bell. He was a radio talk show host. I think he still is around. And he was like always dealing with fringe subjects. So I was always fascinated with the material that he'd immerse himself in. It was really incredible. You should check it out. In fact, there's a Tool song that has a UFO sample on it about a guy that's talking about Area 51, which was ripped directly
The
from
last
Art
track
Bell
of
radio
Lateralus, right?
podcast. Yeah, last track on Lateralus. But anyway, I digress. Art Bell had this metaphor, this concept about these planes in World War One that would actually have a pilot light that would switch on when they'd crossed past the halfway mark of their fuel. Their petrol tank had gone past the halfway mark. And as such, that light meant they couldn't turn back and get home safely. They were going to crash. And he was saying he applied that as a metaphor to the human enterprise. Has that light flicked on yet? Is it too late? Is it too late to turn back? If indeed we do need to turn back. And I thought it was a really interesting and beautiful metaphor. Have we pushed it too far? Are we fucked? That's the question.
I had a thought just then that maybe what it comes down to is just figuring out whether or not we fundamentally are more in love with and entertained by the natural world than we are by the virtual world that we've been creating for ourselves. You know, what we ultimately find more fulfilling. You know, like I can easily say that I would prefer to live my life out in nature, you know, surrounded by its beauty than sitting in front of a screen, but I'm not sure that there are a lot of people who would say the same because they find so much instant entertainment by technology and by virtual reality.
And also you can manipulate it. You can manipulate the virtual world. Nature, you can manipulate to a certain degree, but it's harder. Nature has its own consciousness behind it, whereas virtual reality, you're the god, you're the king of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, man.
Well, that's even out of my hands.
People get out into nature. They're just like, fuck these mosquitoes. Like,
Exactly.
They're not quite.
Well, again, nature shows us our flaws, and nature shows us our
place, you know.
It does.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas, you know, imagining these virtual realities, it's escaping that morality, which arguably lies inherent in nature.
Yeah.
You know, nature arguably is the deliverer of, you know, karma, of you know, morality and stuff. Like, you know,
the equalizer.
It is exactly the balancer. So to transcend that through technology is arguably, and I know like the Amish and all those sorts of like, you know, communities would argue that wholeheartedly, is that like technology is evil because it's trying to replace nature or natural order with our own fucking, you know, power over
control.
it.
Yeah.
Control.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Well, I love to get off the grid. I love to get off the fucking grid. Get out into the countryside.
There's nothing more healthy.
Already feel lighter. I mean, when I'm on the highway and I'm seeing the 9 to 5 zombies that are sitting in their car with that dead look in their eyes, sitting behind the wheel of their car sweating. They've just divorced their wife and they know that they're stuck in this loop that they just don't want to be a part of. I feel a stress, a tense energy. Don't want to get... I guess it's quite hippy-dippy, but I feel it in my throat and in my heart and in my body when I'm on a highway. That shit escapes me, man. It evaporates when I get out into the rolling pastures in the countryside. The light pollution evaporates. I can see the stars and I remember that they're there and I feel at home again. Just to get off the grid for a moment and I think clearer. And I'm not as angry. Like, I'm far less inclined to lean on a horn out in the rural countryside than I am. I don't like to honk. I just don't like to honk because I hate being honked at.
The question I pose, and this is a question I pose to myself as well, is that why do you then come back to this world? Why do you come back to this? You know,
I
this
guess
city?
I like the electricity and the rush as
Yeah.
well. I mean, once again, we always go back to balance.
Yeah.
It's a matter of dynamics for you.
Shit's happening here. Like, and I like that.
Yeah.
That part
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Like, I wonder if we have the ability to pick and choose the things that we really do love about technology. Like, I was thinking, okay, would I be willing to give up everything that comes with technology? And I thought, well, most things, you know, you can get in the natural world. Like, you can sit down and watch somebody play music in front
Yeah,
of you.
sure.
At the same time, there's a lot of electronically produced music that I really love,
Yeah.
that I really enjoy listening to. I love that I am able to see the moon and call my friend and say, "Oh my God, look at the moon!"
We've
right
done
now."
that before,
I know,
man.
exactly.
I love that. That
Exactly,
was amazing.
instantaneous contact.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's, I guess, you know, how much are we willing to compromise? How much are we willing to give up? And should we have to, because we have this capability to produce these things? Is it just a matter of discipline, of knowing
Where
when
you
we
draw
should
the line.
stop?
Yeah.
I think, well, I mean, you know, isn't that something that we're, you know, in essence trying to work towards is assimilation of technology into an eco-friendly way
Yeah.
back into the environment so we can have the best of both worlds, I guess, you know.
There's too many people with, I mean, the military-industrial complex, man. Like, try saying that to them.
It's already an
and
established
you're gonna-
system.
Yeah, man. I mean, they're not going to want to hear a thing about that. And
But there are ways to progress forward, I guess, you know, without having to revert back and destroy, because that's what, there's something in that I hate, is this constant idea to harken back to something.
back to the
As
primitive.
destruction.
Yeah, it is. It's a
Like,
destruction
let's
of
try and
all
destroy
all the
things.
knowledge of
Yeah.
all the
It's
you
an
know. Even if we're not
Alexandrian
using the
moment,
tools,
you know?
you don't want to lose the knowledge. You don't want to
Yeah.
lose the you know, the insights that we've discovered in the last
Yeah.
2000 over our whole history. Really,
Yeah.
you don't want to lose any of that. But it's a matter of using the knowledge and things we have, you know, sustainably and
Yeah.
But wasn't
What
that
if-
being done before modern civilization? I mean, we think of the, you know, primitive tribes that had, you know, ceremonies that would explore the kind of consciousness or the collective consciousness while still living within nature in a really quite, you know, sustainable and
Yeah.
beneficial way.
Absolutely.
They were doing that possibly before, and we think of ourselves as, again,
Yeah.
being more progressive, again, being
Above that.
above that. But I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. There's something in living quite in touch
Yeah, man.
with your surrounds, and I think technology kind of what it does. It again, it's really, and I mean, just the way you use it, but it seems to limit you to inside your head. You know, and it doesn't, and you kind of forget about your senses, you forget about your feelings. It's all quite abstract and virtual, I guess.
Yeah.
And you can replicate, I guess, senses, and you can replicate all of that within technology, but you're still a step away from what is actually
From
there in
Mother,
front of you.
from Earth.
Yeah,
from
yeah, yeah.
What
Yeah.
we stand on, yeah.
Interestingly, I was thinking about that on the way here, but in the context of language. And believe me, I love language, but in some ways, our ability to communicate verbally and in writing has dulled our other senses. You know, so like from an animal instinctive point of view, we don't use our hearing as much as we once did. We don't use, you know, our other physical senses. And, you know, one could argue that we physically sense and perceive a lot less because we have language.
Language
Yeah, well,
itself,
we don't-
absolutely, that's a big argument.
We don't really listen to the wind, I guess. I mean, that sounds really cliche and hippie-ish, but we don't really take into account what it's doing, how it's moving, where it's going, because we're constantly abstracting it into words. And
Yeah.
we just say, oh, that's just the wind. But it's never just the wind. It's the wind, the trees, the birds, everything combined. And that tells a story, and that paints a
Yeah.
picture.
not only does it paint a story, arguably it communicates something personally as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
There's that whole element of like that whole shamanic thing of like, you know, the little rodent that runs past and does a little, you know, movement or something, that's communicating to something. And when you start paying attention to that, when you start
Yeah.
using your senses
Okay.
that way and start using the language, you're actually communicating with nature. You're communicating
Yeah.
with
But-
something.
So there's a language within nature, though, and
Yeah.
that's the. I mean, there's already a language within nature.
But what are you
itself.
doing when you say there is a language? Like what do you mean? Isn't it just a communication, expression, a sense? Can't it just be seen that way? Does it have to be such a structural
I think
thing?
communication is a better word. Language sort of assumes that there's an abstraction from something.
Or a
Language is
structure.
language is a
Something.
representing of something
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is happening,
yeah.
whereas
Okay.
communication is just actually just happening.
I mean language in the communicative sense, and that's this is funny, man, because language is dicey, and this is great that we've entered this territory. It's a very dicey thing where it's very subjective. I mean, our understanding of the word language itself is like right now it's splitting up before
Yeah.
our eyes.
Yeah.
That's the hilarity of it. Language is quite clunky and hilarious in many respects. It's a drunken clown. Like sometimes it just doesn't get to where you need it to go. But I mean it in the communicative sense. I mean it in the fact that experiencing nature, experiencing the trees, the wind, the sky, there is a learning, there is an education that takes
Yeah.
place within that. And that's what I mean.
Well, I like in the sense of language as a human construct, you know, defining things and ideas that it in itself is also organic. If you think about different cultures and expressing individual perspectives of that culture, that, you know, different languages can have its own thing to say, and that's where there's this miscommunication
Absolutely.
that arises, because it's a completely different perspective that might jar.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
And that's why when there's adaptations and changes in, say, a French novel becomes an English novel, it doesn't quite
You don't
drive
say
at what
the
was
same
being written
thing
by the French
necessarily.
author.
Yeah.
Because there is there's this sort of jarring incompatibility between languages, and languages have
Yeah.
been considered by many philosophers to be an organism in and of themselves, in the way that they mutate and they have sex with other minds and they spawn into other cultures, and some will die out if they don't evolve and they don't fit into the current paradigm. They seem
how
to
about
have
language?
some strange life of their own.
If you strip it back even away from the idea of words, if you put it down to the syllable level, like, you know, a lot of ancient communities, and like the Sanskrit for one, Sanskrit language in like the Indian sort of culture, is like this idea that the syllables actually contain these powers, and so the syllable, the sound, is what's important. It's not the idea attached to the sound. It's the sound itself is representing that thing.
Like, oh.
Like it's like AUM, which is like the, you know, the creation, preservation, destruction. But they have a whole other range of things which represent things in a really sound, like it's still very sense based.
Yeah.
Whereas language has sort of come out of that a little bit more, and it's not so longer like the sound is representing what it was to begin with. It's
Yeah.
now the idea attached to the sound representing the thing that was. So it's like a third step. It's like we have the reality, then we have the sound, now we have the idea.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a backtracking almost.
Maybe even further, now we have the corporation with
Yeah.
the product,
Yeah.
and we're creating language, new words based on older words, but
Which don't
have any, like,
that have
audible
no actual
meaning.
at all.
As children, we're taught, we are praised when we can label something. Good boy, good girl. If we label birdie or cow, we are praised. And what we're doing is we're sticking these labels onto all of these.
Let's end it out. First, talk about tape. So we turn the side over and gonna stop right.
So you were saying that
I was saying
This
we
show
are-
is proudly brought to you
Are we
by
back on,
Kleenex.
we are beautiful.
All right. So as I was saying before, as children, we're praised. We're praised when we can actually label an object as being a cow or birdie or whatever it is as children, and that's like sort of sets into our heads that it's good. It's good to be able to apply words to something, but through the process of sticking labels onto objects and onto animals and onto the sky, whatever it is, we're actually separating ourselves from the object. And for that reason, language has been considered to be a very negative thing in many respects, because it's actually separated ourselves from what something is. And words will never drive at the heart of a rock. When you say a rock,
What about ourselves, our own names? Do they represent us?
no, they're silly. They're a string of letters, but we get so caught up in it. If someone gets your name wrong, the ego goes into a tornado of fury. It does. It gets pissed off. I mean, there's so much put into words. If a little child is, Mummy, my brother called me a sissy. You know, Matt called me a sissy. So what? Get over it. Big deal. But no. We apply so much meaning and so much investment into words that from a young age it's belted into us. And I mean, our sort of, how could I put it, dominance or efficiency or how effective we are when it comes to language dictates our life.
I think one thing we're not touching on here though is though that language does actually possess power that we've created. It's not a real power, but it's a power that we've created, and it exists because we've created that power attached to it. There was this little girl at my work, and she was like really stressed out one day, and I was like, what's wrong? And for those listening, I'm a teacher, by the way, so I don't just hang out with little kids. But
What's wrong with that?
I'm a teacher too. No, I just hang out with little kids.
oh yeah,
I
that's
just do that.
the way to go. But she was really freaking out. She was like maybe 6, I think she's in prep. And she was stressed, and I was asking her like, well, what was wrong and stuff, and she said like, oh, my mum said I'm sick. And I'm like, well, do you think you're sick? And she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, you don't look sick to me. She's like, but my mum said I'm sick.
Yeah.
And it was like this whole identity thing.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, I genuinely believe like people can think themselves into, with sickness particularly.
Definitely.
Like you can stress yourself out and it makes you sick. It weathers down. You know those people. It's like the power of negative thinking
Yeah.
can really damage the body.
Yeah.
So if you know this girl's been told by her mother that she's sick, the girl is going to take that on board and be like, I'm sick, and then she almost thinks herself sick. And by the end of the day, she was pretty much physically sick.
Yeah, absolutely. The power
because
of the mind,
because she
right?
was so worried about being sick that worry created the sickness.
I love the story about that cat getting caught in the alley. Take it away. I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get it out.
Did I just lose it? And then your mind would try so hard to make sense of this idea of being sick that you would define things that you are feeling and thinking as being part of that sickness. So you know that's another level of damage, is that you're already like defining non-sickness, non-afflictions with being sickness.
It's like hay fever. I mean, I know there may be physical aspects to it, but you sneeze and you get an itchy nose, and then every time you have those same symptoms, you apply it to hay fever. You know, and I mean, yeah, fair enough, but it's just like taking one particular pattern, putting a label on it. So I mean, people who are sad, let's say, you know, or you know, they're feeling sad for a lot of time. What they really want a lot of the time is just a label put on it. They want to be diagnosed, you know, because they can't handle with just living with that nausea, with that kind of
They feel in
ambiguity, you
control.
know.
They
yeah,
feel in
exactly.
control when
yeah.
there is a word applied.
And that's
to
what language possibly is, to quite a significant extent, is just us trying to control.
I think it is.
You know,
I think
Yeah.
that's the root of it.
With the hay fever example as well, like once you've recognised, oh, I've got an itchy nose and I'm sneezing, I have hay fever. Now that you have hay fever,
You have
you're
to treat
observing.
it.
You either you have to treat it, you're observing, you're waiting for those symptoms to
Yeah,
repeat themselves.
yeah, exactly,
And
yeah.
this is a question. Like I'm not saying it either way, one way or the other, but like by observing and waiting for those symptoms to represent themselves, are you actually creating their recurrence?
Yes.
Well, of course you are.
There's neurologically, I'm not sure how it applies to sickness, but certainly in terms of emotions, if you consistently think a particular thought pattern, your brain creates those receptors and multiplies them so that it's like
Strengthening the pathways.
Yeah, exactly.
Plasticity of the neuronal pathways in the brain is
Or
a
lack
fascinating
thereof.
thing. Yeah.
The I did a course in Vipassana meditation at the beginning of last year, and the whole purpose of that course is to sit in stillness for like 10 days straight, 11 hours a day. You're just sitting in stillness, meditating. And the idea is to observe all the sensations of the body without any attached idea. So if you get the itchy nose, you get the
Itchy
sneezing,
balls. I get itchy
and you
balls
just
all the
observe.
time.
You just observe it, and you watch it pass.
Yeah.
You don't go, I have hay fever.
Yeah.
You watch it happen, and you watch it pass.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, your whole psychology, your whole body is just so rejuvenated because you're not thinking about the things which are going bad with the body or the pains. You no longer feel. I mean, pain is such an elusive word anyway. What is pain? Pain is sensations, and there's so many varied sensations which we use the label of pain to describe. But that's it. You don't associate like these sensations that you're having as painful or as negative anymore. So you have the same thing which maybe a month ago you would have called a headache, but you're just experiencing it, and by just feeling it out, you're actually allowing it just to be and then to go and recede, rather than going like, this is an inconvenience, I want to get rid of it.
I'd rather
Right
take
now.
a Panadol, man.
Amen to that.
But by that, but arguably medicine is actually making the whole human race a lot weaker.
Well, it's
It's
the role of
making our own
validation.
physiology a lot weaker.
It is.
It's validation. You've got someone outside who has an expertise, the doctor, who says, okay, I've got these symptoms. I'll come to you. Yes, you are sick. This is the cause, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yes, I'm sick. Thank you, external source, for telling me that.
Yeah.
And we've got it as from a kid, you know, all
But-
these little symptoms of things that the body might naturally want
How
to
can
do.
you expect a doctor to have any real idea about what's going on with you?
Yeah, exactly.
I
Never
mean,
go to a
he-
doctor with
he-
a dead office plant. Like, it's a bad start. It's a really bad start.
I like that.
I actually posted this thing to my sister, Alana, if you're listening, the other day, which was a pathologist. It was on this Humans of New York page, which is brilliant. I don't know if any of you have seen it. And he said, I see so many things come through my lab with the most ridiculous investigations into sickness because people prefer to hear that there is something wrong with them than to hear how they could prevent things being wrong with them.
Yeah,
It's
right.
like, you're sick as opposed to don't drink 20 cans of soft drink a day.
Wow, that's an interesting one. It's like
The
when
onus
I've got to
is
have
elsewhere.
accountability, it's like,
Yeah,
fuck
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
That says a lot about humankind.
Well, that's the whole thing of having doctors is we give the responsibility to someone else for our health, rather than going like, how do I remain healthy? How do I take my own health?
It's
into my own
very
hands?
ritualistic too, because you notice that doctors are often in, the white lab coat.
Yeah.
Like, well, maybe not so much
Maybe not
anymore.
the GPs and
Yeah.
stuff. Like, I don't know what doctors you go and see. but-
Well, he constantly sticks his finger up.
There you go.
As long as they use a rubber glove,
He
that's
sticks his
fine.
finger up. I'm
otherwise,
not sure if this guy's a real doctor at all. He just says, "Come back for your next hemorrhoid check next month."
Does he call you the
No
next week at
charge.
least?
Just a checkup. I mean in the sense of like, I guess where like fashion, like there's some sort of like scientist stress in the white lab coats. You've got the doctors, the medical profession that dress up like this. Nurses dress in that in a certain way, and it's like there's something like
It's all
like-
about image.
It's
You know,
like-
you're portraying an
there's
image
something
of
tribal
something.
about it.
I love
It's
the
like the same
gospel,
thing as a witch
you know?
doctor. It's like there's this understanding that they're
Playing the role.
They're playing a role. Well said. And that and in that there's kind of a bit of a joke that's taking place.
Yeah.
Well, everything sort of is a placebo. There's powerful placebos, and but it all kind of is a placebo. You know, like back in the day, a shaman might have cracked an egg over your head and said you're cured now,
And you'd be
and
like,
people would have the power of belief. Now they prescribe a chemical to you, and yes, the chemical has some physical attributes which actually affect the body. But is that as powerful as the belief that I'm taking this thing ritualistically daily
I'm getting
to
better.
make myself better? I'm thinking I'm taking this, so I'm getting rid of that thing which is making me ill, and it's more the psychology which is fixing the body. It's like
Absolutely.
the power of the thought is
Absolutely.
actually more powerful
And it
than
can
the
go the
chemical
opposite
itself.
way. I mean, we can get the mind damaging the body. And I love to bring
yeah.
this up, the Russian train car incident, where a man got caught in a refrigeration car, and he believed so strongly that he was going to freeze to death in this thing that he did. But when the authorities found him, the refrigeration wasn't turned on. He
I've
exhibited
heard
the
this,
same
yeah.
symptoms.
Wow.
He exhibited the same symptoms
Of
of
a
pneumonia.
frozen. Wow.
All across his body.
Comes
Yeah.
back to the power of thought, you know.
Yeah.
That
the whole
is-
idea of the placebo effect, which is still an inherent process in medical experiment research and testing, that's still an accountable percentage of medication testing is this power of the mind. It comes down to placebo.
Yeah,
It's just not
absolutely.
worth it, but yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's the power of belief as well. Like, you have those Buddhist monks that are able to do that selectively, like change their temperature just through meditation. They can change their body temperature. He did that, but he hadn't trained in that for like years as the monks do. They go off and then just sit there and feel their body and change their body through the power of their thoughts. But he was able to do that in the stress. The
right
stress was able to
circumstance.
make him exactly the right circumstance because he believed it so strongly
Yeah, you get-
that you just do it.
you get
And that's the
mums-
power of belief.
Mums
That's-
lifting cars off their children, and people walking on hot coals. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot to be said of that as well. People walking on hot coals. I used to work with a guy at a fish and chip shop. It's not quite like walking on hot coals, but he used to dip his thumb and fingers into the deep fryer, and then pull it out, and not a burn on him. And I never had the courage to try it myself. I mean,
Probably a
this guy-
wise idea.
He just had a prosthetic hand. Didn't he?
He did have this zen look about him when he
Yeah.
did it, and he did say it was to do with mind. I mean, he was the first to admit that. He said, "Oh, it's just it's a head thing." He wasn't being arrogant.
Mm.
He was saying that's how I've
I
overcome.
didn't see that as arrogant. I think that's really impressive if a man can do
it was,
that.
and I was so close sometimes to doing it, but I stopped.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel like I had that Jedi.
Well, that's the
training.
thing. If there's a single
Element
Like-
of doubt.
a single flex of hesitation,
That's it.
that's what'll
Yeah.
That's what's going to burn you, man. Talking
Leap
to
of faith.
the lovely lady the other day, and she was talking about how I don't know how we got into this conversation. No, I do. I was telling her how I'm fascinated with bees, and and we got into the conversation of, I'm like, have you ever got stung by a bee before? Have we all asked that question before? I feel like people have asked that. Maybe I'm the only weirdo that asks that. But she said she brushed her hair one time. She was out in the city, and this bee was on her hand, and it was like in the moment that she registered a fear response, it stung her.
Yeah.
And I brought that up with her afterwards because a friend of mine who works in an apiary just down the road. Apiary? How do you say it? Apiary.
It's bound to be a word.
It's a place where bees hang out. It's like the place where they just chill.
Right.
Anyway, he has to wear a uniform because these things fucking jack him. Like, they just attack and they sting. But the owners, the management don't. They don't have fear around these bees. The bees register that and they chill. They can crawl all over them, and these guys won't get a bite. This guy does. He's got the fear response, and they pick up on it. They're highly in tune with it.
I've heard that a lot of times.
So
That's all animals as well. Like
Yeah.
it's dogs, it's everything.
bees are badass, man.
Bees are
I'm
bad.
fascinated by bees.
I know you.
We can't lose them. If we lose them, we don't get veggies.
Yeah. Well, apparently we're exporting our bees because the bees around the world are dying because
Shit,
their
man.
environments and nothing's being pollinated. That's so much of our environment
That's
heavily
scary.
rests on bees.
Mm.
And our bees are like the only ones left that are doing the right thing.
I know, man. There were a lot of theories as to why bees are vanishing. Amongst them being Wi-Fi signals confusing their navigational frequencies, where they couldn't actually find their way back home. Other ones being parasites that have found their ways into bees. But it's only when these things happen that we realise that we're in a cobweb. We're in a cobweb, and we
Yeah.
rely and depend upon all of these things around us. And to beat up nature, to cut down trees, to fuck shit up, is to have an effect on us as human beings. And that's quite an egoic way of looking at it. But if we want to survive, don't go kicking around this thing that we're on, because you're gonna fuck yourself.
Well, the thing is, our response to that is to create artificial pollen, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Like, I assume that would be the chain of thought that we will go down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which, of course, is never going to be as effective as the
Yeah.
real thing.
Yeah, I don't think
But
so.
that's a
It's
solution to everything, you know?
Yeah.
Have little cyborg bees
Yeah.
pollinating flowers.
If you can't make it, fake it.
I think that's a worry. I think we should be really scared. And I mean, I think there's a
But the-
statistic that there's one species vanishing every day. I'm not sure how many we have, but that
The-
sounds pretty
Good on
scary.
it. They've got
That's
the
the
right
thing,
attitude.
The attitude
I'm
so
getting
often
the fuck
is
out of here.
the attitude so often is like, okay, when you acknowledge there's a problem, rather than correct the problem by taking away, it's like you said, like the patients that go to the doctor, and rather than changing their habits of drinking 20 beers a day, they'll go like, oh, I just want to be told I'm sick and take the medication for being sick rather than change my habits. Again, it's the same thing, whereas like we find out that we're killing bees through our, industrialization activities, whatever. Rather than change that, we go like, how do we create artificial pollen? How do we create artificial
That's
bees?
what I'm saying.
Rather than going like, how do we stop the industrial
Yeah.
movement to go back and fix the problem in its infancy?
Yeah.
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 How far back do we go? I mean, Drew, you were saying before that you
Don't
have
regress,
this.
just
What
keep
what
going
is it?
forward.
What is it that concerns you about regressing? Anyway.
It's not confronting the problem.
Okay.
It's easy. I mean, I myself as a personality, I'm impulsive in that way, in that if there is a situation that I don't feel I can tackle, I just completely flatten it.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
destroy the evidence, nothing there,
Yeah.
and you don't you know,
But you
you
never
don't
lose-
go into it. You don't
Yeah.
actually address what it is. You don't understand it. You don't
Yeah.
understand what's going on. You leave it to chance.
You're not getting to the guts
Yeah.
of the situation.
It's cutting the symptoms off rather than the cause. It's like medication. It's
Yeah.
Yeah,
dealing with the
yeah.
symptoms rather than the cause.
Deceiving
yeah,
yourself.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Exactly.
To regress would be to deny.
regress is denial.
Mm.
So
Okay.
push forward, understanding as much as you can of the situation.
Unless the initial state of the world was perfection, and
Yeah.
every human derivation from that has just been like a twisted experiment to realize, oh fuck, anything we do but what we were initially doing was perfect, and everything we do, every action that we do as humans
Well, that's
is just going to
the,
fuck things up.
that's
So
the
we
story,
need to go
yeah.
back to
That's
the
story,
Garden of
that's
Yeah,
the
but-
story
but
of
then-
Genesis.
but- yeah,
Adam and Eve,
yeah.
Eve of the apple.
Yeah.
Shit's fucked up, man.
Yeah.
You fucked
Yeah,
up,
but-
and everyone's fucked up.
Go create a beer.
So it's either we are this virus and we keep going as a virus and naturally the organism will correct itself and get rid of our virus, or with this thing we were talking about before of being aware of our existence and our progression and our story, we acknowledge that we are a virus and go about correcting ourselves instead of having to be corrected.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Rather
Yeah.
than going right back, you can acknowledge it through the process.
Mm.
I mean, is war a great thing? I mean, is violence a great thing? I mean,
It's
is this stuff
necessary.
supposed to happen? Is this stuff supposed to happen so we can come to some enlightened point where we go, wow, we fucked up? Are we supposed to fall over and bruise ourselves and then brush ourselves off?
Of course.
Or, yeah, I mean, I think that's the case.
It's all relative.
But, like, how many more genocides or horrors must we go through before we finally come to the conclusion that maybe we do need to really do something about this? Or is it supposed to happen? Destruction, creation, is this supposed to be the perpetual process towards something far greater than ourselves? Is this all supposed to happen? Is this a program where we are actually supposed to be doing all of these horrible things, as well as all of these really beautiful things? To completely banish bloodshed, to completely go, fuck that, that's horrible, let's not do that, let's live in peace and love. Maybe that's missing the whole fucking point. Maybe this is supposed to happen.
I think we're always missing the point. But I think we're always missing.
Can we end on that note?
I think we're always missing the point because we keep asking the same questions.
Yeah.
We keep-
What have we done? Have we done it properly? Are we doing it properly? The question is now, and there is nothing more than what is happening now. Really, whatever we contemplate in the past has already passed. I mean, like when you have, let's say you had a traumatic event in your childhood and you're latching onto that and that's affecting your behaviors throughout your entire life, that isn't perfection because that isn't in the now, because you're constantly being driven by something in the past. So if we stop looking to the past
You gotta
and we
kill your
stopped
history.
expecting of the future what we want or anything and just live in this present moment.
Don't you think there's a lot to be learned from the past?
No, I think there's more to be learned right now than anywhere else.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like, what would we learn from somebody before that we can't learn from each other right now?
Don't attempt communism.
Why not? but
I
if
know, but-
communism works in our context immediately now, which it does, which it is working because you've shared your beers with us. That's a form of communism. Drew's
You've got to
brought
pay
his
me for those
mics
beers.
And
by the
again,
way.
and communism is just an arbitrary
Capitalism.
label given
based
to.
on the history and
You
based
could
on,
use communism to represent a million different things,
It's but a word.
and some of them are bound to work.
yeah.
No, I totally disagree. I think that we need to learn from the past. I think that it's
Learn
an important
what?
thing. I think that it's a great thing, and I think that and project to the future as well. I think that's a very a normal human trait. It certainly I understand the concept of there's no time like the present, and that it's constantly now, and it's an all flowing now, and that's all there is. But I think to look back at our past mistakes is part of the human endeavor, and I think that's what makes us great.
Yeah, but why do you call those things mistakes? And what is it about them to make them mistakes?
I guess maybe this is
Because
what
they
I was bringing up
happened, you know?
before was, are they mistakes or aren't they? I'm not saying they are. I bring them up now as mistakes, but was genocide, was Hitler, was the Third Reich, was that a mistake, or was that part of a natural process that needed to take place? The reason I say mistake is because I'm attaching a negative connotation to the death of millions of Jews. I feel like that's horrible, and I know you would feel the same,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's why I say perhaps that was a mistake, some false step that we made in the process.
But that implies that I think I sort of agree with what you're saying in that whatever has happened, whether or not it can't be a mistake because it happened, and we can't change the fact that it happened. You know, like those series of events have led to what is now the present moment.
Yeah.
So,
Do we live with no regrets then?
What's the alternative? Well, I don't think we know how to live in the present moment.
Yeah.
I think the idea is to acknowledge it all as a singularity in terms of like to see time as cause and effect, pure cause and effect, rather see it as these different branches shooting off in all different directions. Directions.
Freudian
but-
flip. You
Freudian
Freudian
flip.
flip.
It's getting late. We instead of seeing it as branching off in all these different directions, with all these different potential futures and pasts, you know, playing themselves out, to just see it as a single flow of events which have happened for a reason, as cause and effect. I think that to me is partially what like to be enlightened is to understand things as causality, because then you become not necessarily detached in a resigned sort of way, but detached like by seeing when things happen in your own life or happen around you, you just say like it's just happening because of all these reasons which have led to this point in time. It couldn't have been avoided. If it could have been avoided, surely we would have avoided it, but we didn't, so it's happening, and just let it play itself out, and it loses that sort of. I think with using a Holocaust example, that's an extreme example.
It is. But
If you
they're
put
there.
it
There
on
are
an
other
individual level, like to say, you know, when you're young, you have your first girlfriend, and you know shit goes quite wrong. You mistreat her, or she mistreats you, and you get your heart broken. Blah blah blah. And so you take those mistakes, or you know, you take those events happening. And you learn from them, and you then change your behaviour with your next relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that
that's
doesn't
including the
mean
past.
yeah,
That's still including the past.
it does,
And
but
learning
it
from the
doesn't
past.
necessarily need to look back at that previous relationship as that was horrible or it was a mistake. It was just like, oh, that was a learning thing. It helped me to learn in the
But
present.
your past feeds into your present, right?
Yeah,
Would you agree
100%.
or not? So much.
Yes, but
Yeah, into your idea of your present. It
Yeah.
doesn't feed into your present. Your present is just what you're experiencing at the moment. What you think of your present is your idea of the present,
And you're
including
saying
the
there's a
past.
big difference.
I think there is a difference. I mean, and it's really difficult to talk about. And it's in a way it's an abstract thing to talk about, even though you're talking about something present. But it's kind of it's the only thing we have. And I mean, maybe to put it somewhat more tangibly, if something happened in a park, and you heard about it 3 weeks ago, do you then, like, you know, somebody got stabbed, do you then not
I
go
was
to the
thinking
park?
I heard
rape,
about
but
that.
Let's go with Stab. Every time something bad happens in a park, I think of rape.
Yeah, true.
we go with rape?
Yeah, well, you could have both. You could have a bit of rape and a stab. I mean, if that's what tickles your
Whatever
fancy.
floats your boat, man. Yeah.
So do you then not go to the park because you're cautious of that happening to you, or do you go to the park and what happens then is what you confront then, because you can't really know. The past doesn't teach you anything necessarily about the present, the way you're going to behave, the way somebody else is going to behave. They're all kind of ideas about what you think,
And you can-
what you think the
Yep.
pattern is going to continue on like.
And
But-
that can contribute itself to this idea of risk society, where we're viewing, like, because parents don't these days let their
Yeah.
kids play outside on the streets and in
Yeah.
parks
Too
and
big of
stuff.
a risk.
They keep them because it's risky, because someone might stab or rape them.
Yeah.
Which is terrible,
But
because kids are missing out on that whole beautiful experience,
And
which we were lucky enough to have in our childhoods. I hope everyone here did, like, of playing out in the streets and just running off with your mates, you know, with no parental supervision,
No
like
cell phones.
from 4 p.m. to like 5 p.m. or
I
something
think
like
that breeds the stabbists and the rapists. The fear in itself, there is kind of us, the fear itself of somebody stabbing you, just like the fear of you getting sick, creates that in a way. But it's a mass and it's a collective fear that we share. So if somebody comes up to you and, like, you know, so somebody, I don't know, if we invited somebody else and we didn't really like them, let's say something was wrong with them, and then we said, oh, that guy's an asshole, he's quiet, he's, you know, he doesn't say shit, he doesn't have anything to contribute. He then doesn't have anything to
And
contribute.
he adopts that personality. yeah,
Exactly,
adopts that
because part of our
He
image
made
is
that
not
spot for you.
is not only what we project out the world, but what the world projects back
They
at
say
us.
there's
the
this thing
past
with
is-
identity where you can either when an identity is put onto you, for example, you're the quiet asshole that doesn't contribute anything.
Yeah.
When an identity like that is put onto you, it could be an identity of anything. When an identity is put onto it, you either accept it, you reject it, or I think there was like 4 modes that you can respond. I read this somewhere anyway. Like you can accept it in a positive way, like just go like, yep, that's me, fuck it, I don't care. You can accept it in a way like, oh, I have to change. Like, okay, they're right, but how do I like fix myself? Or you can reject it in a negative way. You can reject it in a way of saying like, well, they're wrong, I am that, but that's actually a good thing. They're the bad ones. Everyone needs to be a quiet asshole that doesn't contribute anything. So there's that attitude as well. Or there's the reject it of just being like, no, I'm not that. You know, the denial approach. I'm not that thing that I'm saying. And you can then either prove that you're not, or you can just sit in like the knowledge that you're not, or like your own self-knowledge that you're not.
I think the past is intimately tied into the present, and the future is intimately tied into the present as well. And I feel like it does feed in, and I feel like I feel like in order to navigate this life effectively, we do need to learn from our previous experiences. And I pulled my balls out. Maybe about, this is probably about 10 years ago now. I watched Me, Myself and Irene. No, I watched something about Mary. Do you recall that bit where Ben Stiller zips his balls?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to see what that would be like, right? So I put my balls out.
What the fuck is wrong with you, man?
I didn't go for the full zip. I just went for like a subtle zip, right, on the ball sack region, and it really hurt. And I quickly unzipped, and I was bleeding, and I knew that I wasn't going to do that again. So, in a sense.
Most people would have seen that scene and be like, I know I'm not going to do that. Or at least I know I'm not going to do that intentionally.
But like, that's an example.
But what made
that's amazing,
what
man.
made
I love
you do
that
that?
you did that.
Did your past and your future, you know, expecting... So maybe what you said, oh, look, I've heard of people doing crazy shit before and they've come out looking kind of cool. If I do this, then I can tell my friends that I tried it, and it's a story that I can use, you know, to boost my ego.
It was actually so embarrassing that I only told this story about 2 days ago. This is a long time ago now. So, yeah, I don't believe it was for those purposes, because I'm sure I've done that before where I've wanted to tell a story by doing it, but that wasn't this instance.
Well, then you're just really testing the
parameters. If I hear that there's shark attacks, right, like a spree of shark attacks that have taken place down in the bay, and people are getting fucked up left, right and centre, just jacked by these great whites that have come in there, hungry motherfuckers, I'm not going to swim in that water. I'm not going to go, well, you know, I'm going to live in the now. And, you know, I'm not going to do it.
I think we definitely need to use the past for our survival instincts, but have we created too much caution for ourselves by focusing on experiences of the past instead of letting them sit in our bodies and in our memories as these instincts that we know?
Again, there's also this idea, and like we were saying, like how nature is self-correcting and stuff.
Yeah.
This idea of like it's chance and it's accidental. Like if I'm in shark-infested waters and a shark comes out and attacks me, it's accidental.
Yeah.
And that's the idea which breeds fear. Whereas if you see it as meaningful, like if you see things as like, well, if a shark comes and eats me right now, it's because I needed to be eaten by that shark. That was what was meant to happen. I know it sounds kind of fucked up, but like if you can go in that mentality completely,
they were breeding there.
If you can embrace that mentality completely and just see nature as a whole organism and say like, if I get eaten, that's my fate. That's just what's going to happen right now, and be an acceptance of that. You get rid of that fear, and it's sort of like it takes away that ego of like, I need to preserve myself. I need to preserve myself. You know, if a shark comes out, there is a chance, and there's this whole, you know, mathematical possibility of things going wrong. Rather than viewing it as like that, just saying like everything happens for a reason. And like if I get eaten by a shark, there's a reason for that.
Sharks love fear too. Like they'll smell it, whether it's through urine or whether it's through the raised heartbeat. Those motherfuckers can smell you long distance, and they'll come honing in on you. And speaking of sharks and speaking of feelings, and man, there's some statistic that if you own a gun, you've got far more of a chance of actually getting attacked or something happening to you. You're actually magnetizing this frequency. And there was a point in Parkdale, where I don't live in Parkdale.
Parkdale, Massachusetts.
San Francisco, where the place pretty much erupted into just a testosterone-fueled Clockwork Orange gangster landscape, and you'd walk outside and you'd just hear the hum and rev of vehicles, and there were constant bashings, and amongst my group anyway. I mean, we thought we were losing our minds. We literally couldn't walk 2 streets without getting confronted in the least. We got hit quite a few times, and this carried on for about 3 weeks, and then they kind of just vanished. But I think that something to do with my fear, something to do with my absolute horror at these sounds of cars and this intimidating sound, had them come like moths to a light bulb to me and the group. I have a feeling that was part and parcel with why we were constantly getting confronted. We wouldn't make it. We'd be walking to house parties. We wouldn't make it far. We wouldn't make it that far before someone came up and aggressive and looking for a fight. And you'd be like, no, I don't want to. They'd find something. They'd find something you said to jump out of the car and start going at you.
I'm going to play the devil's advocate here and say, is that potentially egocentric?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's totally narcissistic to say that.
Assume a world that kind of gravitates towards individual consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally see that point. But I am talking about a collective group of people, and I do believe that our energies, our conscious energies, are extending out outside of our flesh vehicles into the external world, and that these energies are being picked up on unconsciously or not by other people. And I think that there's something to that.
But is that necessarily gravitating towards individual consciousness, or is that an acknowledgement or a sense of a universal attribute of being an animal, which is fear?
Yeah.
You know?
True.
Yeah, you can look
They're
at
like
that,
sharks.
that perspective.
Yeah.
And they were like sharks. I mean, even the cars move like sharks. Man, there's something about cars sometimes where they're not moving at like a regular transport pace from A to B. It's like a hunting
prowl.
vehicle,
Yeah.
and they had that quality. You knew when they were coming.
And they kind of load to the ground
Yeah,
as well.
man.
There's
They
got
had
some like
that-
kind of
They had
sliding.
that quality.
Just on that argument you said earlier of at this primal thing of animals sensing fear or whatever, there's this other argument which says that because our observations affect things. I think that's Heisenberg or whatever that says our observation is actively influencing what we observe. You know how when you can feel someone looking at you, you don't even know someone's there,
I've
or you just
done
feel
many
them staring at you, and you look around and you see someone looking at you, and you felt that, you perceived it.
Absolutely.
Same thing with animals. Same thing with all sort of conscious things. As soon as you're observing something, you're influencing it. You're affecting it by your mere observation of it.
Yeah.
Not even just on on a Newtonian level, but on a quantum level.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Observing something defines it.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
The photographers in.
Arguably, then you could say that animals are fearless, except for when we observe them. So we witness animals as these fear-filled creatures, but that's only because we're exerting our fear onto them, and that fear is reciprocated back. So this
right.
again, this is the whole Garden of Eden kind of thing, where it's like humanity is the virus, as you said. It's like that's our fear that we're projecting outwards, and animals are actually these really peaceful beings, arguably, that only feel fear when they're being observed by humans, or when they come into contact with human beings, or in the midst of human.
Do you mean that
Do
they
they
are
exist?
aware
Activity,
of
not
their
perceiving.
observation, or just the mere fact of being observed? Like, say you've got
Yeah,
David Attenborough with a
absolutely.
camera, a couple of 100 meters away, observing a lion attacking.
They're not
What is that?
necessarily aware of it, but they're influenced by it.
Okay.
Yeah, well, this is the really interesting thing. Lots of nature photographers that have been working for Attenborough. I love watching behind the scenes Attenborough, by the way. They're almost as fascinating as the David Attenborough documentaries themselves. But the nature photographers were saying photographers were saying that every time they get out the lens and they're observing an antelope or a cheetah or a leopard or whatever it is, they'll notice a distinct change when they pull out the camera in their behaviour patterns. They say it has nothing to do with sense as far as the smells go or sight goes. They are well and truly hidden in the thickets of the bushes.
Yeah.
But their mere presence and the act of actually observing with a camera has actually somehow influenced their behaviour patterns. Something's changed. And the same is said of people that are in the surveillance industry. They say that when they're observing people through cameras, that there is a noticeable change in behaviour when contrasted with seeing people in the natural environment. There's a difference, and they feel it. They know it's there.
I mean, even on a more immediate example is when a camera's pulled out at a party.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I freeze up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Deer in the headlights.
So then is there then a difference physiologically between artificial observation through technology and just visual observation? Is that what
I
it's
suppose
implying?
it depends on the
unnaturalness
context.
of perception in that respect.
That's a good question. But even both levels are still influencing it outwardly. So there's still a change happening from something just being natural and in its own state of being.
Yeah.
But is that like Toy Story? Yeah, is that what?
Yeah,
what we're talking about?
arguably, toys do have a life of their own when we're not observing them. You know, like
know.
it's that is the whole chaos theory. Is that like, you know, a cat is in a box, and as soon as the lid is on the box, every possible thing is happening to the cat. The cat is both dead and alive at the same time. It is clawing at the walls. It is masturbating. It is licking itself. It is, you know, purring for food. It's falling asleep. It's pissing itself. It's shitting itself. It's doing all those things all at once. But as soon as the lid is opened, that becomes one reality.
It's like a
Yeah.
condensed
Based on what the
Yeah.
observer sees.
But I mean,
Collapse
that
the
talking
Yeah,
about
that-
infinite
that-
possibility,
that-
infinite potential, and this goes into the quantum physics
Yeah.
dialogue, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it's the observation in itself that
condenses
defines
reality,
the
defines
thing
it.
materialistically.
Yeah.
So
That-
does that imply that potentially, like, because you were talking about, you know, the true nature of something, like when it's in its natural habitat, but if it is still being observed by something and it's being altered, you know, because of that observation, like, are we only ever our true selves when we are not being observed at all?
I don't think there's ever a time that we're
Well,
not
we're
being
not,
observed.
and I wonder if we're aware of that.
We're born into a world of others, and we inherently know that there are other beings there, and we're constantly observed. And I think Sartre gives an example of soldiers coming up to a house, and they come up and they're crawling, you know, and they're hiding, and they have no idea if there's somebody in there or not, but they're being observed nonetheless, and they act and behave like they're being observed, and that's what we do the moment we come into the world. You know, I mean, I don't know what an infant's consciousness is or what their perspective is, but we're in a world with others, and we're always being observed, and you can't escape that, and you can't.
Your observation in itself
But-
is an othering.
Yeah.
You're separate. You're becoming separate to your environment.
But that's the perception that we are living in a world with others. Are we? Like,
Exactly.
arguably, we are the one consciousness. We are, you know, the singularity. We are the thing. And it's that perception of separateness which creates all these, you know, conditions for fear and conditions for segregation and conflict and violence and all these sorts of things, is this perception that we are in a world with separate beings, rather than going, oh, there's me, there's me, there's me.
Yeah, but even if you do say there's me and we're all the same, we're still placed in a position or a perspective or an intention or on a view that's separate to the one that you're based
which
in.
we
and
have
that-
to act independently.
Yeah. And that in itself, down on that basic, is an observation, is a separation. You can't. I don't know if you can really go any further than that.
I think these observations affecting the external environment go straight back into consciousness, expanding outside of these flesh bodies that we're in. I think that there's this spillage of energy. I think that's taking place, and that's why we feel this sort of deep sense that someone's looking at us and then someone is looking at us. I've been fast asleep in a deep coma, and I've been woken up when someone's been talking about me, and I know that my ears didn't necessarily register that. There's something that's going on that transcends us, that's outside of our bodies, and I feel that this is perhaps what's taking place when an animal is changing its behaviour, or someone through a surveillance camera is changing the behaviour. And I just want
Well, we're talking about intuition here.
yeah,
Or-
gut instinct. This weird thing that I don't know whether it's been passed down through the evolutionary ladder, that there is this felt thing that takes place in these instances where they've done studies where they've had people tested where they have one person. They've got a person sitting in a chair in front of a crowd of people, right? A large crowd of people. Let's say it's 10, 20. And they'll have them facing away from the crowd in a chair, blindfolded, and they need to somehow indicate with maybe 2 taps of their fingers yes, 2 taps of their fingers no, whether they're being looked at or not. And the results come back. The results come back totally in favour of the fact that it's being felt, that people are getting more correct answers as to who is looking at when people are being looked at than the other way around. So there's real weight to this theory that this isn't just an isolated incident that happens to people every now and then. This is a thing. This is a real thing that's taking place. This has been experientially resolved as being, I don't want to say fact, but
Well,
But
see,
I
I
only,
would-
after you.
I would argue that it's not necessarily something that is happening outside of us, but again, if you go back to the quantum level of things, it's more and more being discovered that everything is fundamentally made up of the same matter.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily something that we're connecting, through the air, through the physical, external of our bodies, but it's actually allowing the fundamental matter of everything to communicate as
It's
singularity,
interconnected,
like all being made of the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is so fascinating. I mean, quantum physics is hilarious because quantum physics is this sort of new agey field in many respects when it comes to this new outgrowth of science. But it's what mystics have been saying for thousands of fucking years.
It's a complete convergence of
that we
science
are
and
all
mysticism.
one.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
hilarious that science, the irony is that science is racing away from spiritualism as fast and as hard as it can. It's attempting to explore
it was
the
almost
rational.
it was almost founded the scientific movement as a move away from not necessarily spirituality, but a move away from religion, a move away from
absolutely.
a move away from blind belief.
And they found themselves running directly into the arms of that which they were running away from.
Into
And
the
that
unknown.
that is hilarious. And I think that's another one of the universe's big jokes.
That's
I find
it's
hilarious.
beyond ironic.
It's a classic. It's a classic. I mean, we're talking about two intellectual movements that are just like, run away, run away, run away. And
There's
then
this
come back
idea-
full
Or
circle.
There's this idea-
compete.
Yeah.
Oh, actually.
Oh, let's embrace.
Yeah.
Okay, we actually agree. We've
Well-
got very shared opinions.
Again, there's this idea that everything is cyclical, and if you allow anything to run along long enough over a period of time, it will become its opposite. So science eventually becomes spirituality. For example, you look at religions like Sikhism was founded as this beautiful religion of love. 9 gurus later, it's like this war-hungry, they all have swords and they all, are crazy about, protecting the religion crazy. And that's just the times which allow that and the discoveries and things which happen along the way. Everything becomes its opposite, life becomes death, and that's the idea that duality
Flip sides of the same
is
coin.
the illusion, and that's the idea again. What we were saying before, going down any path, you can discover that duality is an illusion. Any path you follow and you devote yourself to, eventually you'll discover that the duality that you're working within is actually two halves of the whole. It's God and Satan are the one Abraxas God. Life and death are actually this one continuance which is happening that just seem to be separate.
The colours black and white.
Colours black and white are part of an infinite spectrum, which is a rainbow and which is a whole thing.
This tape's running out, guys.
Yeah,
Shall we finish with an om?
we could do.
Do you wanna do an om?
Which is again unifying ourselves into the oneness.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
I love it. Anyone who's listening out there, thanks heaps for listening. You're
Mm.
legends. This has been fun. We were a bit worried about this, weren't we, when we came in? We were a little bit. Some of you were a little bit nervous. I certainly had hesitations.
I'm glad I got to depict a cat masturbating in a box.
Yeah, and I like to
Yeah.
talk about my
I
balls.
like that especially.
I just like to talk about my balls.
Yeah.
It's
We
funny.
did not bring in, again, hard penetration.
Yeah, that's
No.
that's for episode 2.
Just
All right.
happened.
That's for
Okay.
episode 2.
Okay,
That's the
we'll get there.
sequel.
Next
Yeah.
time.
All right, shall we
Those
on?
playing it.
Next
Shall we
week's
on our
topic.
way out of this?
Hard penetration. I'm away.